What would you do if the system you trusted to protect you was the same one that destroyed your family? For Officer Vanessa Hart, justice wasn't denied, it was buried. And on one foggy morning in an old farmhouse, she made a choice that would shock her entire department, split the public in two, and turn her into both a murderer and a legend. It was supposed to be just another night shift celebration, a small gathering among colleagues who had seen too much of the world's ugliness and needed to numb themselves with cheap liquor and laughter. 4 officers, Jake, Marcus, Donnie, and Ray, sat huddled in the back room of a crumbling farmhouse on the edge of the city. The walls were cracked, the ceiling stained with watermarks, and the faint smell of mold mixed with cigarette smoke. It was the kind of place no one would question, no one would ever bother to visit. To the men, it was a sanctuary, a hidden corner where they could shed the uniforms and pretend the world owed them something. Bottles clinked, cards slapped against the table, and their voices rose above the old farmhouse's groans as if they owned the night. With them was Officer Vanessa Hart. She sat slightly apart at first, her posture elegant but relaxed, her presence commanding without effort. She was the only woman in the group, and the one most whispered about in the precinct hallways. Vanessa wasn't just an officer, she was the woman everyone noticed, the kind of figure who turned heads, even in silence. Her dark eyes held both warmth and mystery. Her confidence was undeniable, and her beauty left people guessing if she had been born for the badge or if she was destined for something far greater. She had only been with the department for 6 months, yet every man sitting in that farmhouse had, in one way or another, thought of her when the nights grew long. And on this particular night, she let them believe their fantasies might become real. The drinks flowed freely, burning throats and loosening tongues. The music, once loud enough to drown out their rowdy jokes, had been lowered to a soft hum in the background, barely audible against the rhythm of laughter and drunken boasts. Slowly, the atmosphere thickened with the heat of intoxication and unspoken desires. The men laughed louder, their jokes growing cruder, their hands a little bolder, as though the farmhouse itself gave them permission to leave morality behind. Vanessa played her part flawlessly. She smiled at their comments, leaned into their circle, let them think they were in control. They treated her as an object, something to pass around and conquer, and she gave them just enough to let their guard down completely. But deep inside, Vanessa Hart wasn't drinking to celebrate. She wasn't laughing out of joy. She was waiting. Because that night wasn't about camaraderie. It was about revenge. 2 years earlier, Vanessa's life had been torn apart. Her younger brother, Micah, had been stopped one night while walking home from his part-time job. He was only 17. A kid with no record, no history of violence, just a teenager trying to help his family get by. The officers who stopped him were the very same men sitting drunk in that farmhouse. They claimed he resisted arrest, that it was an accident. But Vanessa had seen Micah's body herself. She had touched the bruises on his arms, counted the broken ribs beneath his fragile skin, seen the scorched marks from the taser burns. She had wept over him, her tears falling on a body that told a story far different from the one the official report described. And she had seen the signatures at the bottom of that report. Jake, Marcus, Donnie, Ray. The department called it justified. They closed the file, brushed it under the rug, and moved on as though Micah's life had been disposable. When Vanessa tried to speak up, no one cared. Her words were drowned by the weight of the badge. Her grief was dismissed as hysteria. So she stopped fighting. She stopped crying. And in silence, she made a choice that would shape every day that followed. She joined the force. She trained harder than anyone. She smiled when they smirked. She played the rookie role, laughed at the jokes, carried the coffee, kept her head low, but her eyes sharp. Every day she wore the uniform, every day she polished her badge, she was moving one step closer to this night. And now, in the farmhouse, thick with liquor and sin, her curtain call had arrived. By 5:13 a.m., the night outside was still wrapped in fog. The fields stretched endlessly in silence, the horizon hidden beneath a heavy gray blanket. Inside, the farmhouse had fallen into uneasy stillness. The bottles lay empty, the laughter had died down, and the four men lay sprawled in drunken slumber. Their snores filled the room, bodies tangled in exhaustion and carelessness. Vanessa stood apart from them. Unlike the others, she was fully dressed. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, her face stripped of expression, her eyes empty of hesitation. In her hand, cold and steady, she held her gun. She moved first to Jake. He had been the cruelest, the loudest voice mocking her brother at the hearing. She crouched beside him, the faint reek of alcohol rising from his skin, his chest rising and falling in oblivious sleep. Leaning close, her lips brushed his ear as she whispered, "This is from Micah." And with a squeeze of the trigger, she ended him. One clean shot to the head. Silence. The sound startled Marcus awake. His eyes opened groggily, confusion clouding his drunken haze. He blinked at her, struggling to understand what was happening. "Vanessa, what the hell are you—" His words were cut short as her bullet pierced his neck. His hands flew to the wound, blood spilling between his fingers, but no scream came, only a choking gurgle before he collapsed, lifeless. Donnie stirred next, eyes snapping open at the sound. Unlike Marcus, he reacted with instinct. His hand shot out for his gun lying on the floor beside him, but Vanessa was quicker, sharper, sober and focused while he fumbled in panic. 2 shots rang out, one in his chest, the other driving into his heart. His body jerked violently before crashing onto Jake's still warm corpse. Ray was the only one who managed to escape the initial slaughter. Half-dressed, barefoot, he bolted from the room, his breath ragged with terror. His footsteps pounded against the old wooden floors as he scrambled down the hallway. Vanessa followed, calm and relentless, her footsteps measured, her grip firm on the weapon that had become an extension of her will. Ray spun around at the kitchen doorway, his face pale, his eyes wide with desperation. He raised his trembling hands in surrender, his voice cracking with fear. "Please, please, don't do this. I'll do anything." Vanessa's expression remained cold, her voice steady and low. "Did my brother beg too?" she asked. "He was 17, and none of you listened." Tears welled in Ray's eyes, his lips quivering as he tried to speak, but her shot silenced him. The bullet tore through his stomach. He collapsed to the floor, groaning in agony, clutching at the wound as his blood spread dark across the old farmhouse floor. Vanessa stood over him, watching without emotion until his movements slowed, his breath stuttered, and finally stopped. By 5:27 a.m., the farmhouse was quiet again. No laughter, no whispers, no life. Vanessa walked to the kitchen table. Her steps were measured, deliberate. She placed her badge gently upon the scarred wood, a symbol she no longer needed. Beside it, she laid down a folded photograph of Micah, her brother frozen forever in youth, smiling as though the world had never wronged him.
On the back, in her neat handwriting, she had written, "Justice was never given to him, so I took it. V." Without a word, she stepped outside. The cold morning air embraced her as the mist curled around her figure. She didn't look back. She disappeared into the fog, swallowed by silence and shadows, leaving behind only the wreckage of her justice. When the farmhouse massacre was discovered, it tore through the department like wildfire. 4 officers dead, 1 female officer missing. Her name, Vanessa Hart, was plastered across every news station, every headline. At first, they painted her as a rogue cop gone mad. But the truth has a way of clawing to the surface. Reporters dug deeper, uncovering the story the department had buried. The broken boy named Micah, the bruises, the photographs, the unanswered questions, the signatures that now lay in blood. The public was divided. Some called her a killer, a criminal who had betrayed her badge. Others called her a symbol of justice, a woman who did what the system never would. Vanessa was never seen again. But whispers endured. Some swore they saw a woman in a black hoodie visiting police memorials late at night. They said she lit a single candle, whispered a name, and vanished into the shadows before the cameras could catch her. No one knew if it was true, but her legend remained. Vanessa Hart, the woman who turned grief into vengeance, and vengeance into a story the world could never forget.